What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized Bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. Hello, all you golf aficionados out there. As usual, we have another fantastic show for you today. Because at some point, almost every golfer out there has taken a lesson, has worked with a coach, is currently working with a coach or instructor, and it's more than likely that that coach or instructor, director of instruction, what have you, have utilized, tapped into, used the information from my guest today and his organization. And his name is Lorin Anderson, and he is the founder and the president of the Proponent Group. And they are 110% dedicated to improving coaches, the coaching experience, the learning facility, anything involved in the instructional and learning side of the business. Whether it is golf instruction, continuing education, how to create a junior development program, negotiating in transactions, running a business, which most coaches don't realize they themselves and their coaching is actually a business. It's not just about getting students to play better. Along with that goes branding and marketing. How are you branding and marketing yourself? Are you even doing it at all? And how do you get started, and what direction do you go? So Lorin and his group actually advise coaches on and facilities on how to do all these things, because over years and even decades, they have amassed a contact list that has come up with the most efficient ways to do things, and they provide that to these coaches and these organizations. So, for example, if you're going to build a learning center, what are the things that you should be doing, and what are the things that you should avoid, so that you don't make the same mistakes that people who have already done this in the past have already made. Lorin he's a creator, he's an innovator, he's a very sharp businessman, and as I said before, he and the organization are 110% dedicated to making the entire learning experience as best as it possibly can be and continue on a steady growth cycle. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. I know I did as a coach and instructor, and I think that anyone that's a coach or instructor that's out there that is not utilizing Lorin and the Proponent Group is probably doing themselves a big disservice, because, again, they provide so much information, and they are more than willing to help you become a better coach, your students become better golfers, and everybody to enjoy it that much more through that entire process. So, as always, please give a big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, Proponent Group President and Founder, Mr. Lorin Anderson. All right, Mr. Lorin Anderson, I am a big fan and appreciate your work, so thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me tonight. Enjoying it.
You know, we started talking about this, I think, back around February, early part of the year, and I have been anxiously waiting like a young kid waiting for Christmas, because you had mentioned that you in the future were going to have you're working on a big project. So I've got it. My first question I got to ask is that out in the world now, and can you talk about it, because I can't wait to hear what it is, especially if you're involved.
Yeah, well, it's kind of going back to the roots a little bit for me. I've been with Golf Channel here for the last about 6 years. They had asked me to come on board and help them build some marketing tools for instructors and help them build up what was called Golf Channel Academy, which was a marketing opportunity for some of the larger academies and coaches. And I really enjoyed doing it, and I was still running Proponent Group, which had been my original business at the same time, and they were supporting that. But about a year, maybe a little over a year ago, it became very clear that a lot of things were going to change for Golf Channel. They were nearing the signing of a new 10-year deal with the PGA Tour, and they also were looking at consolidating their offices up to Connecticut and leaving Orlando after 25 years. And there were just a lot of things going on, even besides those things, before the pandemic hit. And it became clear that there really wasn't going to be an opportunity for me to stay and pursue more instruction projects at Golf Channel, because it just wasn't part of the core business of where they were headed. So I started back around PGA Showtime in January, sort of looking at all the options. And I had never actually sold Proponent Group to Golf Channel. So I went in and said, look, I think this is what I love to do the most. First of all, I love to help the coaches, because Proponent Group is a consultancy for golf coaches to help them with their businesses. And I said, I think that's really what I want to do. I feel like I'm not doing enough with it now. I don't see a great path forward here to do new projects, and I'd like to, refocus on Proponent Group. And actually, Golf Channel was great about it. They said, look, you're right. This probably isn't going to be a core piece of our business. We have a lot of changes coming. So if you're able to do that, you should do it. And they said, anything we can do to help you, we will. And they actually, the folks I worked with at Golf Channel were great about letting some key people know at the PGA of America and some other industry folks, and actually had quite a few conversations with the PGA of America about how we could best work together. And that was a great conversation, because in my 30-some years in the industry, I had not seen a lot of sort of cooperation between the various operations and organizations around the industry. And they actually kind of pulled me in and said, look, the game hasn't been growing. This was pre-COVID, and we obviously had a big summer bump. But the last 15 years, the game hasn't really been growing at all. It's actually been stagnant. And they said, look, we think that, going forward, it just makes a lot more sense for us to try to align and work with various groups out there that are doing good stuff to help the industry. And we like what you've done consulting the coaches and helping them with their businesses, and we want to align with you. So I was kind of waiting to see exactly how that was going to take shape. And then by September 1st, I relaunched Proponent Group, which was the consultancy we've been running for 13 years. And for the first time, we're actually aligned and working with the PGA of America. I now sit on management calls with them once a week. I sit on staff calls with them once a week, and they're providing some back office support for us that we've never had from any of the organizations before. So we're really excited about being back out there, focused full time on helping the coaches with their businesses, because that's an area that really the PGA and the LPGA will tell you very clearly they've never focused on that. And it was an opportunity for my team and what I do to come in and provide supports for the coaches and the PGA members and LPGA members in a way that they really weren't getting that support otherwise. And now the PGA's embraced that and said, hey, look, let's work together. We have plenty of other things to work on, and we want you to keep doing what you're doing. So that's where we're at, Pete. After about a month in, we're sort of re-signing and renewing our former members and adding new members as we go.
And is it doing what you thought it would? Is it growing faster than what you thought, or is it a little slow out of the block as people are?
It's kind of interesting. The game is booming for the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't get a tee time here in Orlando at a lot of places on Thursday through Sunday. It's just crazy how busy it's been. And the golf instructors that we've traditionally worked with at Proponent, as I've reached out to them and said, hey, look, I'm doing this full steam ahead. And, we've got a little bit different business model, like to get you, renewed. I've had nobody telling me there's any cash issues. I mean, they basically, they all said, we're teaching as much as we can teach, just kind of the refrain I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a good time to kind of jump back in, because I think the coaches actually have dodged a huge, bullet compared to other industries. And we've had no problem, we've signed, well over 100 coaches in the first 30 days and probably close to 200 here by the end of October. So we've always had about 400 or 500 that we were working with at any given time. So yeah, I think we're definitely on the way back to where we were, and hopefully we'll end up being a little bit bigger down the road. And with the PGA involved, we expect to be, bigger, in a couple of years as we regrow this thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because Tim Cook, who teaches here, and
yes,
I think Tim's
he is a member of Proponent. Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely.
And we were talking because earlier or late last year, a couple of his young guys that he teaches that are Andrew Orishak was a senior, going to be a senior this year, and then Bryson Nimmer had played his first year, so they were on it. And I asked him what was going on with Proponent Group, and he thought that there were some rumors that you were going to kind of get back into it. But that was right around the time I reached out to you, because I told him I was going to reach out to get you on. And then I had Susie Whaley on earlier in the year, and she said that the PGA was making a bigger push in particular for resources and things on the website for coaches and instructors. And I'm very, very glad that you guys, I would assume that you guys had collaborated to some extent
absolutely.
behind the scenes.
We're all trying to run parallel rather than running against each other. And, they have a development team there on the software side, and they're able to do things I can't do on my own. And we're basically consulting on some of the things that the PGA is going to do in that space. And they're helping us with things we're trying to do. Like, for example, Pete, one of the things that's really nice about working with the PGA is we have some ideas for surveying the industry. And I've always had, surveys I send out to 500 or 600 coaches. Well, now we're talking about sending out those same types of surveys to 6,000 or 7,000 coaches between my members and the PGA members that are full-time teachers. So we're just going to be able to ratchet up a lot of the research we do and a lot of the information we get for coaches, because we're working together. And some things that may not make sense for us to work closely on, and we're completely independent of the PGA, and we can do whatever we want. But the goal every week is we try to look at what each side is thinking about and find the best ways to help each other.
You had mentioned that for a long time, a lot of the golfing organizations weren't working together, and it's not that they were working against one another, but they seemed to want to maintain their independence. It kind of reminds me of the CIA and the NSA and all those government organizations. Why do you think that is in golf? Or is it just human nature?
When you're the CEO of any organization that's large, whether it's the USGA or the PGA of America or the PGA Tour, there's always, internal industry jealousies, and there's internal industry budgets, and everybody wants everybody else to help out with stuff, but nobody wants to pay for it because it comes out of their budget. And you know how if you put 5 companies together and try to get them to share stuff, they'd have the same issues. And I think the organizations have gotten so big in golf that they really operate as major corporations in a lot of ways. But I also think they've also realized that a lot of things they thought Tiger Woods was going to do for this industry just never happened. I mean, Tiger Woods to clarify, what Tiger Woods did very clearly for golf is he brought more fans to the game to follow the game when he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at him as a worldwide athletic superstar, and when he was in the game, people who didn't play any golf at all would tune in and watch, and they loved watching him, just like they'd watch a Lance Armstrong in cycling, or LeBron James, draws people in the basketball that you wouldn't see watching on a typical, Tuesday night NBA game. And Tiger did that very well. I mean, he would bring in and double or triple the size of an audience for a TV event. The problem was the golf industry assumed in the late 90s that those people were all going to go out and buy a set of golf clubs and play the game. That is not what happened. And in fact, since about 2005, up until the bump with COVID this year, we've been seeing a 1% to 2% loss pretty much every year from rounds played. So we've gone from 575 million rounds at our peak to like 450 million rounds. That's 125 million rounds of golf that have evaporated in the U.S. And I think the PGA, the USGA, the Tour, everybody has kind of said, okay, like we need to get a little smarter. None of us want to be in an industry that's shrinking, and we need to be a little smart about how we work together and go forward. And I think that just the reality of the fact that they have been in a shrinking industry has forced them to rethink the relationships.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's amazing how you can sit there and crunch and plan and come up with all these different things, and it's just outside influences in life that make the biggest changes, often for the best.
Yeah, look, and what's happened this year with COVID, I mean, who on earth in the middle of April when 70% of golf courses were shut down and nobody was getting on a plane, et cetera, who on earth would have believed that by the middle of June we would see record tee time sales almost across the entire country? I mean, it's amazing what has happened to golf this year. And now the question is, can we hang on to these people who've kind of come back into the game or tried it? That remains to be seen. But as long as people have other activities that have been postponed or canceled, golf looks really good, and golf is in a really interesting place at this very moment.
What is your theory on why the number of rounds were slowly diminishing for, would you say 1 or 2% per year? Is it just society in general? As you look at what happened when you have, one click and get things in 2 days, and you can binge watch, and there's so many. Golf seems to be competing not with other sports only anymore, but other things that draw attention with apps and binge watching and Netflix and Amazon Prime, all these other things out there that are in the world.
Here's my theory, and I can't say that this has been verified by anybody smart. I don't consider myself the smartest guy in the industry. I just kind of try to put two and two together. And I would say that the biggest change in the last 6 months is that people are not in their car commuting for an hour in the morning and an hour at night. They're not going to their kids' soccer tournaments all weekend long. I mean, all of those things that took up and sucked all that time out of your day and your week have kind of been put aside, and people are around the house more, they're in their neighborhood more, and it's easier to go out and play 9 holes in the evening, or it's easier to go out and hit a bucket of balls. And I think, that change of the use of time has been significant in the last 6 months for a lot of people, and a lot of other events that they normally would spend money on and time on, like going to an NBA game. Well, there's no NBA games in Orlando, so that's just more people have more time to go play some golf. And I think that, there's some runway for this thing. I mean, this isn't going to end tomorrow. And it's, down here in the South, I mean, we've got good weather coming. So I think in places where you can keep playing golf, it's going to be a big solid fall and winter going forward as far as interest levels staying up. But I think it's a time thing more than anything else, Pete. Honestly, people just have a little more time, and they're a little closer to home. They're not traveling for business as much, and it's just a little easier to throw the clubs in the trunk and go play a little bit more. And hopefully it continues. Hopefully a lot of offices don't necessarily reopen 5 days a week. I think Golf Channel and Golf Now, which was their big tea time business, the CEO of Golf Now has said that, he's not sure we'll ever have people back in the office 5 days a week, because the company's bigger now than it's ever been, having a great year, and they're doing everything from home. So, people may have a little more time than they used to have if that's the way a lot of companies rethink the schedule. Yeah,
and it seems across industries that people and businesses are having more and more people have found out through this whole scenario and this COVID deal that working from home, so long as you're getting things done, many people have become even more productive because they're not being interrupted.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've worked at home at least 2-3 days a week for 25 years. When I worked at the magazines, I actually worked at home a couple, 3 days a week. And I've always got more done by noon at home than I get done all day in the office. There's no doubt about that. So for me, this whole COVID thing really didn't change my life as far as work went, because I've always worked most of the time at home. So I've always known that was the case. And honestly, if you're working at home 5 days a week and you haven't done that before, you get a little stir crazy. So going out and hitting a bucket of balls at noon, or taking an hour lesson or half hour lesson at lunch hour, or going out at 4 o'clock and playing 9 holes. I mean, those opportunities are available and open, and people are doing that. So, hopefully it continues for the sake of the game.
I like you, I work from home quite a bit, especially the last, I would say 10 years. And especially given the podcast, and in my house, I have a townhouse, but I have a big office, and I moved into this place about 4 years ago. And the reason I moved out of my other one was I didn't have this space in there. And I work either in the living room or at the kitchen table. And I try to tell people nowadays, because they say, God, I get so I'm at home and work, and I'm at home when I try to relax, and it just, the environment it gets mentally conflicting. And it's like, yeah, you got to get out of it sometime at some point.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like, I've never enjoyed going to the grocery store as much as after 9 hours at the computer. It's like, oh yeah, I'll be happy to run over to Publix, no problem. What do you need?
So a lot of people who are listening are obviously going to be coaches and instructors and people within the industry. But for some of those who might not know what Proponent Group is, can you give them a little history of kind of the genesis and your thought behind it, and where it came from, and how it evolved?
Well, the story of how it got started is very clear for me. I had been working for Golf Digest and Golf Magazine for 17 years. Most of that time had been working with the top teachers in the game. I actually had started the top 100 teacher list at Golf Magazine, which has now kind of been copied by every other golf publication. And that's kind of my legacy on the instruction side at the magazines, was starting the lists. And once we had the list, I'd be out on the road doing photo shoots with these top teachers. And invariably at every photo shoot I went to, the breakfast or the lunch or the dinner conversation wasn't about golf swings. It was about, hey, how's so-and-so running his academy, or who's he hiring for that job, or what is he doing with that new technology? Because everybody that works in this industry is in a silo. They're kind of in their own silo all day, and it's hard to know what everybody else is doing. And especially 20, 25 years ago, when you didn't have as much stuff on YouTube and different places to go search online, people really kind of were on their own little island, and they would ask me these questions. And when I realized it was time to move on from the magazine world, because they were going through a lot of changes at the time too, I asked 6 or 7 of the top 100 coaches that I've been working with. I said, look, if I was able to manage your website for you and help you with your marketing and all these business things you're always asking me about, would you pay me a monthly retainer, and would you want me to do that? And the 6 or 7 I called said, well, when can you start? I mean, every one of them said, well, when are you going to start doing this? I said, well, I can probably start this like next month. I said, good, I'm in. Just tell me when we're starting. Because they just never had anybody helping them with their businesses. And I enjoyed doing that for about a year with about 8 or 9 clients. But I also kind of realized as a business, I wanted to have a little more stability, and I wanted to help more people. And that's when I came up with the idea for what's Proponent Group. And basically in 2007, we opened it up to an annual fee. It's roughly $500 or $600 a year, has been since 2007. And they pay us an annual fee. And we basically push out, newsletters, weekly updates, all focused on the business side of the industry, helping them with everything from building a teaching building to figuring out which certification programs to take to, how to write their bio for their website. I mean, we cover dozens and dozens of topics. And some coaches, some of it they don't need, and they throw it away. And other coaches like, I need that one. I'm going to jump in and do it. And over the course of a year, hopefully we help every one of our members in a variety of different business-related ways. And we do comp surveys that are the most detailed in the industry. And we do some other research that's really detailed. And we also help people when they lose a job or they're looking for a new job through helping them, prep for interviews and get their resumes cleaned up and all that kind of stuff. So anything on the business side that they're not getting help with from anyone else. And again, I say the PGA and the LPGA are great at what they do, but their focus is on helping you learn how to give a golf lesson. Mm-hmm. It's not on helping you learn how to build your brand. And we can help you build your brand and do those things on the business side.
Yeah, and what you're doing, it like I said before, it was very good to hear that the PGA and you at Proponent Group are collaborating, because you guys filled. I mean, they had gotten so big that, and as you just said, that they want to teach them how to become better teachers, or at least get them started. But like you said, it's running a business, because I used to teach teachers, young kids that want to get into teaching, and getting them the reality of, look, when you go out there to teach, your competition is now going to be me, and it's not going to be in this area Andrew Rice or Tim Cook, and
Yeah.
we're all friends, but you're still competing for business against those people. So getting them to see that perspective of, well, they're going from a introductory level teacher, and they go through these classes and think they got all figured out, but then they actually have to go in the world, and the last thing is, like you just said, it's running a business, and that I don't think that really resonates with them a whole lot.
No, and I'll tell you the way I kind of get in their heads a little bit, and I've spoken at quite a few section events, and obviously we've been doing Proponent Group events for 13 years. I'll say to people, I said, look, it's nice to be really talented and be a great technician, and have a pretty full book, and you make money, you're able to pay your bills, and that's all great because you're in a profession where you can make some decent revenue even if you don't know much about running a business. I said, but you know what? At the end of the day, nobody's doing a pension for you. You got to pay for your own retirement. At the end of the day, you got to pay for your kids to go to college. At the end of the day, if anything goes wrong or you get hurt, you don't have necessarily workman's comp. And I said, you've got to protect yourself and your family. And the best way to do that is to leverage your intellectual property as best you can. Are you charging as much as you should charge in your market? Are you running the programs that elevate and generate the maximum revenue for you? Are you building a brand that's sustainable in your area for the long haul? And they just kind of look at you like, oh, I never thought of it that way, because they're making enough money to pay the bills. And, we kind of jokingly say that, golf instructors are successful despite themselves a lot of times. Like, they can make enough money to think they're doing well, but they don't realize how much they're leaving on the table because they don't really understand how to leverage the business opportunities as well as they could. And that's where we try to get them to think bigger and think smarter about what their future should look like if they do a good job of leveraging what they know.
Because you have a lot of things, as you mentioned, on your website that you help all your members with, and I'll just read a couple and I'll go down the line. It coaching and becoming a better instructor, how to build and set up a teaching center, running the business as we just discussed, branding, marketing, negotiating transactions, junior programs, punch list items. What seems to be the one that most people gravitate to the most?
Yeah, it's whatever's gone wrong that day. I mean, honestly, it's really interesting because they all want to know all of it, right? They all want to think that they're running a good business and that they're building a good brand and that they've got a great website and all that. And that's great. And those are the kind of things that happen. But I'll tell you, every week we get a call from a member who's got a problem. Either a new GM came in and their job is on the line, or they've been let go, or they've been told that their job description has changed, and they don't really know how to handle those kind of negotiations or handle those situations, or even know how to build a case to go in and argue their point. And those are the ones that are the most interesting to me, because that's where we feel like we really help people when they're in a crisis. And in COVID, in March, we were really kind of, again, between the old Proponent Group and the new Proponent Group. And when COVID hit, I went to the Golf Channel people and said, look, I have to help these members right now. Like, we can't wait. And the day the PPP loans came out, we had information to our coaches within 24 hours of how to fill out the form, how it was going to work. These are people who've never filled out a government loan form before and never asked for money from the government. And by the end of June, we had over 500 members, past and present, who had gotten PPP loans. I know a lot of those people would probably never have gotten those loans if we hadn't stepped in. So those kind of situations where people are struggling, things aren't going the way they want, that's where we like to be able to step in and try to help any way we can, or at least get them to somebody who knows how to help them if we can't do it. But it's amazing. The week does not go by, Pete, where we don't have sort of an emergency phone call come in that somebody really has a problem that has to be dealt with right away. Mm-hmm. And that could be on anything. It could be and then we have people that call about fun stuff too, like, hey, I just found out the club's approved a teaching building budget, or they want to put a teaching building together. And then we help them, find examples of other types of clubs that built similar buildings. And we help them with budgets. And I helped Mike Bender and my wife here, who's an instructor in Orlando. We help them build their building. I know a lot of things that can go wrong. And those conversations happen all the time, and they're a lot of fun. And we build all that information and put it on our website. But the most enjoyable part for me is helping people who really are struggling and there's no place else for them to turn, and they've got a career issue that needs to be dealt with. And that's where I think we, over 13 years, have literally helped hundreds of our members over that time frame.
I would have to think that, given that you started the Proponent Group, when you more or less got out of the magazine industry and started your own business, let's say for ease of conversation, that had to be a scary moment for you at some level, wasn't it? That you don't really know what's going to happen. You had, I think you said 7 or 8 clients, and it's like, okay, what do I do from here? And it should give, or I would think it would give a lot of coaches and instructors some peace of mind, knowing that, hey, here's a guy who basically built a business out of just the value he provided to people and the things that he was able to ascertain through his prior career and the people he knew.
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed. I mean, I've had an amazing career because I literally came out of college and 3 weeks later I got hired at Golf Digest, which was pretty unusual at the time. And I had a nice 6-year run there working for a major company. It was a New York Times company. Then I got to work for Time Warner and Time Inc. at Golf Magazine for about 10 years. I went out and did my own thing now, off and on for 13 years with Proponent Group. And then I also got pulled back into Golf Channel when they asked me to come help them with their instruction projects, which is, Comcast and NBC. So I've seen it from every angle. I've worked for the biggest companies in the world. I've worked on my own. I understand the thrill and the anxiety of both, because there's thrills and anxieties of working for an NBC Universal, and there's thrills and anxieties for being your own boss and having to eat what you kill. Mm-hmm. So I think I can relate to a golf pro who works at a fancy 5-star club and maybe as an employee. And I also can understand the guy who's at the back of the range at the public golf course at the end of the street, who's trying to build his first teaching gig. Because I've kind of been at both ends of the spectrum, and I've enjoyed both ends. Like I loved working at Golf Channel. I loved working at the big companies. I also love doing my own thing. I'm kind of weird that way. I think most people kind of gravitate one way or the other. I'm pretty happy doing both. But yes, I do understand what it feels like to be a coach in a silo on their own, trying to maximize their business opportunities, because that's what I do every day too, on their behalf, actually.
Mm-hmm. What, as far as Proponent Group in the early years, and then your time where you were splitting more or less between Golf Channel and Proponent Group, and now you're more or less back into it
Yep.
the majority of the time. How has it evolved since then? What has changed over time?
I think we were ahead of our time a little bit. Honestly, I've told people that I think the last decade for instruction was really about technology. Mm-hmm. I really felt like the 2010 to 2020 was really about the mass acceptance of TrackMan and sand putt labs and force plates and 4D and 3D video technologies. I mean, all that stuff just came hurtling at golf instructors, and we were early on that. I mean, we had a lot of those people talking to our members in 2009, 2010, and the TrackMan has been working with us for almost the entire 13 years we've been around. We had, I think, about 3 or 4% of our members owned a TrackMan the first year we were in business, and now I think it's like 75% of our members own a TrackMan. So we watched that whole wave. But if you look at the last couple of years, those technologies are still improving and refining, but you're not seeing these breakthrough technologies hitting the market that are just completely different and require tens of thousands of dollars and all that. Like, I think most instructors for the near future kind of have their technology in place. And while they may do upgrades, they kind of have the tools that they need. And those diagnostic tools, which is really what the technology is, for the most part, is fantastic. Like, there's really not much more you could ever need as an instructor than the information you now have about what happens when the club and the ball connect, right? If you have those technologies at your facility, you know everything you pretty much need to know, and your student also gets to see the changes in real time with real data. That's behind us now. It feels like the next decade is really the business decade. Now guys have spent 25 or 50,000 or whatever it is on these technologies, and they've built teaching buildings. And now people are coming back to them and going, hey, we spent $400,000 on a teaching building. What's the return on the investment? Hey, we spent $25,000 on TrackMan. What's the return on the investment? And that's kind of where Proponent Group steps in and says, okay, we've been talking about this stuff for a while, but now let's start putting paper to pencil and figure out, how do you adjust your programming? How do you change the way you market yourself? How do you rebrand yourself so that all of these things you've invested in and all these changes you've made in your business are now paying off for you financially too? And I think that's kind of where the next few years are going to be focused, is really guys are saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm also maximizing my business the way I've maximized all my spending on diagnostic tools.
Yeah, and I had Karen Morgan on, and by the way, Karen said to say hello when I
It's
told you you were coming
fantastic.
on.
Yeah, the best in the business.
And earlier, or when some people ask, in particular, golf pros say who's coming on and who do you have slated and who's on deck and all that good stuff. And when Karen was in queue, so to speak, I said, well, Karen Morgan. They said, well, she has a PR company in it, and they said, well, why would you have a PR company on a golf podcast? And I said, the fact that you asked that question is why I'm having her on there. That you don't even know it. I mean, and this is not a knock on golf pro. I mean, I was there. I was 20 some years old and had no idea. I thought, I just go out and teach and people get better and more people come to me and I make more money, as you described, and had no idea about the business aspect of it or PR or marketing or any of it. It's a great thing. And any coaches or instructors out there, if you're not getting on Proponent Group and joining it, you are missing a massive opportunity, as Lorin said, to grow your business exponentially. You had touched a little bit earlier on some of the getting phone calls almost daily, emergency phone calls. What are some of the most common challenges that members come to you with, and how do you help them through that?
Well, I think, look, the number one challenge, and this is something that we're working on at the PGA too, trying to figure out, is we have an industry that has very little data. We have all this data on the club and the ball connecting on every shot that a student hits, during a lesson. And at the end of the year, the instructor can't tell you how much his business was up versus last year, how many lessons he gave versus last year, how many new students he had, and what those new students spent with him. Like, there's no tracking in the golf industry. The only people in the golf instruction industry who really know how to track the key performance indicators is Golf Tech. And that's why Golf Tech gives 1 million lessons a year, because they know how to build a business, manage the marketing around those demographics, and measure every one of their instructors in real time. You can sit at headquarters at Golf Tech in Denver, and you can see every lesson given by 700 instructors that day in real time on a laptop.
That's amazing.
Nobody else has that kind of technology. And people used to give Golf Tech a bit of a hard time, like, oh, people are taking lessons in a strip mall. What's that all about? I'm going to tell you something. They understand how to build a business, and they understand the value of having data to make business decisions. And we're talking to some key people in the industry, and the PGA is very involved in this, where we're looking at 2021 is one of those years where we're going to start to get a few key people out there to start tracking a lot of key data involving their instructors that work at their facilities. And I think a year or so from now, the conversation could start to get pretty interesting if we start to see what's the difference between the leaders and the laggards, right? And what's the difference between an instructor who drives business back to their facility and doesn't really drive much business back? And what's the programming look like that generates the best revenues for different types of demographics and situations? And I think there's a lot of information there that could be culled very easily, but it's just been a hard part of the industry to find somebody willing to really dig in and take the time to start collecting that data. And I think some of the big operators, the multi-course operators, the Billy Caspers and the Club Corps and the Troons, I think are now starting to look in the space a little more than they did in the past. And hopefully, under their leadership, where they can have 400 or 500 or 600 instructors under their umbrella they could track, that would start to create some data for the industry. So that's where I'm excited. I think that's the next big thing too, is getting away from all the diagnostic data that we have for the golf swing and having diagnostic data and KPI data for the golf instruction industry.
Would that be things like where your students or your clients or your customers, whatever you want to call it, are coming from, the demographics on them, the breakdown of male versus female, age differentiations, all those, that type of thing, or is it something else?
Here's a good example, and I didn't really answer your first question completely yet, but here's a good example of the kind of stuff I'm really curious about. Golf now is really good at understanding the value of a tee time at any given day of the year and time of the day. And they know that a tee time at Tuesday at 10:15 in the morning is worth less than a tee time at Saturday at 9 a.m. And they've got algorithms, they've got ways to understand what those values are, and they can do historical data and other ways to figure out what the optimal value is for that tee time. And then once that tee time goes without being sold, that golf course can never get that tee time back. It's fungible inventory, and it can never be resold once that time has passed. And golf instruction is kind of similar, right? So once an hour goes by that you didn't have a lesson in it, was that the best use of your time to not have anybody in that lesson? Would it have made sense to have a special offer to a certain demographic to bring a new student in during that time? Or do you charge more on the weekends because you can't fit everybody in who wants a weekend lesson, but you have leftover inventory on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Do you charge more for lessons on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just like golf courses charge more for the tee times on the weekend? And these are the kinds of things where until we have data to look at and really understand what's actually flowing through the lesson books of the different instructors, it's hard to make good decisions, right? And that's where I'm excited about working with the PGA, because I think in the next couple of years, we're going to start to have data on things like that and be able to make real decisions that are testable and provable as to whether or not they work. And that's where Proponent Group and the PGA could really help people make more money and build their businesses in ways we haven't been able to help in the past.
Because it's the concept is very simple, and it's a fundamental principle of everything. Whatever gets measured gets paid attention to.
Exactly. And that's been the problem for golf instruction, is none of this stuff is being measured consistently. Literally, besides the fence around the data that Golf Tech has, there's nobody else out there that really has comparable data from instructor to instructor across a wide range of coaches. It just does not exist at this point.
Is some of that going to be involved with the AI intelligence where once let's say you have an instructor in the Orlando area and they find out that X amount of their clientele comes from the greater Orlando area, and then X amount comes from, let's say, upstate New York in the wintertime.
Right. Yep.
Would that include things like this time of year starting to drop ads in certain areas based off the criteria entered into, say, a Facebook, that their picture or their ad would pop up in let's say Rochester, New York metropolitan area?
I mean, if you're Jim McClain or Ledbetter and you have a significant budget, you could probably do some very smart targeted. I mean, you can pinpoint target with Facebook, as you know, and I mean, we used to do stuff for Golf Channel Academies. We could get to 25,000 golfers in a metro area, and we'd spend $55 to do that. So, I mean, it can be done. You have to have somebody in your team who's willing to do the research and the timing of all those things. But I would even say just even the basic stuff of understanding very clearly, like when people signed up for summer camps, and making sure that you're signing people up for summer camps before the guy down the street is signing them up in the spring. Like you get just timing everything out and knowing when your business shifts from one season to the next. And like you said, when people start to show up in Orlando, how far ahead do you start planning to start getting those times booked with people from out of town? I mean, there's not a lot of academies or instructors who have any infrastructure in place to track those things or even think about them for next year. And I think that's where there's a lot of opportunities kind of left on the cutting room floor that just never really gets leveraged.
How does if you have an organization like your wife Cheryl runs Mike's I think his lead instructor,
she's their director of instruction.
Director of instruction. So, and he has a fairly decent sized operation. What do you tell the coaches out there that are, say, like you said, at the public golf course, teaching at the back of the range, that it's themselves and maybe their spouse is helping them, or a sibling or a friend? How do they go about doing some of these things?
Well, we kind of touched on it. Like Facebook, anybody can do that. You can advertise to thousands of golfers in your local market for really very little expense. I mean, $1,000 budget, you can get your brand in front of a lot of golfers in your area, let's say. If you're Mike Bender's Academy and you're doing, 5 instructors full-time year-round, I mean, yes, they have some money for marketing, but a lot of what they do, a lot of golf instructors, their marketing is their time, is what they're just not comfortable writing checks or hiring somebody to help them really do, traditional marketing. And honestly, with Facebook and Instagram and all the other options out there, if you're willing to put an hour or two a week into creating content and an hour at your computer to load up some content, you can get in front of a lot of people and you can build a decent audience over time if you have something worth people, listening to or watching. And, Mike has done that really well here. Mike Bender, he has somebody who works with him on a regular basis every week on Instagram. They film lessons. They break the lessons down into different, videos, and they push content up pretty much every day of the year. Now, it's a lot of work, but when you have a major academy, it drives people in from all over the country for golf schools, for private lessons, for all that sort of stuff. I mean, Mike and Cheryl, In last year, I think they had people from 31 or 32 countries that came in and visited them. And a lot of those people found Mike and Cheryl through social media and things like that. So if you have a big name, and Mike has a huge name. I mean, obviously he teaches Zach Johnson and a bunch of tour pros, and he played on the tour. And I mean, he's in the top handful of instructors in the world. So he has a lot of free publicity, through advertising or through articles he does in magazines and on Golf Channel and things like that. So he's in a unique position that a lot of places can't replicate, but it doesn't mean you can't get the word out about what you do in your programming in your metro area. And, Pete, if you can own the 20 miles around you, you can have a great instruction business. If you're in any kind of metro area and you own the 20 miles around you, and any golfer within 20 miles who knows about you and thinks you're the best teacher in that 20-mile radius, you're probably going to be as busy as you want to be.
Would you say that George Gankis and his fast rise would be a prime example? Not if anyone's out, not taking anything away from George, he's a phenomenal teacher. But his use or utilization of somebody who had a camera, they would video lessons. They would, like you said, put clips on Facebook and well, not Facebook, but YouTube and then Instagram. And he has grown exponentially. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a faster rise of an instructor than George.
Yeah, and look, it's all about the tools, right? I mean, why did people start driving cars? Because it was a lot better than riding on a horse all day. So, I mean, if you can use social media for $50 for something that used to cost $5,000 to put in, Met Golfer magazine to be in the Met section, now for $50 or $150, you can get in front of 75,000 golfers in the same area. Why would you go buy a $5,000 ad for your academy? So George figured out very early on that he's a talker. He likes doing content. He's very comfortable in that environment. He found a guy to work with him who I think they had a bit of a falling out, but the reality is that he had somebody who understood the other side of it, and the two of them together built something early on that took off. And he also had good golfers working under him. And once you start getting some attention to some high up golfers and they start directing people to your social media, it does take off exponentially. And, good for George. He looked at the tools that were available and he figured out the smartest way to use them.
Yeah. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I give him all the credit in the world. I'm very happy for him and his success, and hopefully it continues.
It's fantastic to see what he's done. And there's going to be more of that. Because honestly, the golf magazines and Golf Channel, I mean, I'm not sure how important they'll be for golf instructors for visibility in 5 or 10 years. Honestly, I mean, I think if social media continues to grow and can be leveraged in smarter ways, you can build your own audience of all the people you'll ever need to fill your book.
Yeah. Who wrote the article? Was it 1,000 true fans? If you have 1,000 true fans that will follow you, come anytime you have a clinic or a school or a book launch or whatever it is, new video, that they all follow it, then you don't need 100,000 followers.
Yeah, and it's the same for golf instructors. If you have 1,000 golfers within 20 miles of you who think that you're the guy or you're the woman for instruction in your area, your book is going to stay full, and you never have to go outside that. And I think there's some examples of coaches around the country who own their local market really well, and they don't really worry about being in the magazines or doing a bunch of big social media stuff, but they have done a great job over the years of cultivating the local golf market, and they own that local golf market, and they will do well for as long as they want to be on the teaching team.
Do you see some up and coming instructors now thinking that I've got to get an Instagram page, I got to get a Twitter, I got to get a Facebook and YouTube, and I got to constantly pump information out there, where they try to jump into that too hard, and then they start to lose some balance of their education and other things?
I mean, they all think that, right? Because they all see George and they all see Mike Bender and they all see these people who have built these pretty big followings, and they all think, well, I've got to have a big following to be successful. And that's not really that true. The way I kind of look at it with, say, a younger instructor who's 25 years old, who's now trying to teach full-time, kind of in their first full-time teaching gig, I'll say, look, have a website with all the critical information on it that's easy to use and that you can be booked on, because that's the hub of your communications. Everything you do, you're going to send people to your website. So make sure you have a website that functions the way it needs to function. And on that website, on the homepage, at the very top, you want to have something very clearly expressed for somebody who's never taken a lesson from you. And at Golf Channel Academy, we focused all of our coaches on doing a new student assessment, we called it, an NSA. And if people come to your website and they have no idea what to do first, they're going to see that new student assessment right there at the top of your website, and they can click on it, go right in there, get in your book, and know that that's the first thing they're supposed to do when they come out to see you. And we had our coaches about 80% of the time when a new student did an NSA, that new student came back for more instruction. So it was a very smart way to use the pipeline once people knew enough about you to go to your website and then make them take the next step. Now, getting people to your website can be done in a million different ways, right? It can be media you're in. It can be social media postings. It can be, in the dining room at the golf course. It could have your website and a picture of you on every table. I mean, there's a million ways to get people there, but you have to have a central location where your key information is up to date and people can figure out how to access your instruction in a smart way. So that was kind of what we focused on and had a lot of success with it. And I think, everybody wants to do all these things. The other thing I would say, Pete, is instructors get spread way too thin. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be good on Instagram, don't try to be good on Facebook and Twitter too. Focus on one of them and build as big an audience as you can on one platform and do a great job there. Because what happens is if you post once a month on Facebook, once a month on Twitter, once a month on Instagram, and once a month on LinkedIn, you never build an audience on any of them.
No, I think that hits home. I know for me that I had to learn it. If you're going to do it consistently, whichever medium you pick. Otherwise, because people are constantly on their phones and they're constantly waiting in airports and they're looking at these things. And if you're consistent with it and they know when to expect it, then they can look forward to it. And that's part of the formula, isn't it? That you want people excited to see what you're coming out with next.
Yeah, and basic marketing from the 1950s when sort of national marketing really took off. And if you watch Mad Men, it's kind of the first wave of that.
George Lois, the story of George Lois.
Yeah, so that world was about impressions. They call it impressions. When I worked in the magazine world, it was about impressions. And you basically would sell Callaway on the idea that you get 6 million impressions a month if you're on the back cover of Golf Digest. And we're going to sell you that back cover 6 times a year. And, you're going to be the only company that's going to have that many impressions on the back cover of Golf Digest this year, and you're going to pay a premium for that. And the idea was that, brands are about something that's embedded in your brain over time. So Instagram and Facebook and all these things, they're like crack cocaine, right? Like once you start scrolling, you just want to keep going and seeing what else your buddies are saying. Mm-hmm. And you're going to go through that scroll every day, and they know that. And if you see the same things popping up, like you said, your brain starts to ingrain the idea like, oh, why am I seeing, Mike Bender on here all the time? He must be really good. Like, look at all this content he's got. And it goes into your brain that this is somebody who really knows what they're doing because that's the way you've been trained. When you see something over and over and over, you just assume it's a stronger brand, right?
Yeah, it's what's in front of you. It's like, okay, if it's up here all the time, it must be good. People must be gravitating towards it, or else why would I see it?
So if a young instructor is listening today and nothing else comes out of this conversation, and they may not like anything else we have to say, the one thing they should take out of this is they're all going to try to do social media. They're all going to try to build these big audiences. Start with one platform you're most comfortable with and just kill it and focus on that. And if you go a year down the road and you're on Instagram all the time and you've got more time on your hands, if you want to add Facebook or if you want to do tweets, that's all fine, but make sure you've established yourself on one of those platforms really, really seriously before you start spreading yourself too thin. Because every golf instructor gets in the middle of their busy season and they don't post for a while and they lose all their momentum with their audience.
Is there anything that you could give somebody a little help if they're not in Proponent Group right now? That would, for example, how many if they're going to post to YouTube and maybe take clips of that video and put it on, let's say they're going to use Instagram, how many videos should they be pushing out a week?
I mean, I think a couple of posts a week is where you want to be, and you don't want to be posting constantly. I mean, you don't want to be posting a before and after tip 365 times a year because the return on the effort is not going to be there. Mm-hmm. But if you're consistently in that feed, once or twice a week year round, you're going to develop an audience. And I think, again, what happens is people have the best intentions, right? And they're in the off season, they got a couple of shoulder season months, and they go create a bunch of content. They do it for 2 or 3 months, and then things get busy, and they have no plan for how to keep putting content up. So one of the things I'll tell people up north is I'll say, hey, it's September. Your course looks great right now. go out and film a 1-minute tip on every golf hole on your golf course. 18 tips on 18 different holes. And don't post any of those until next summer. And next summer in June, July, and August, when you're in the Met section and you're given 50 lessons a week and you have no time to create content, you've now got content you can put out every week or twice a week for the entire summer. And that's the kind of thinking that golf coaches don't really do. They just focus on, well, what can I post right now today, rather than mapping out and planning out a campaign that runs throughout the year. And especially when they get in the busy season, what are they going to post when they have no time to run around and create fresh content?
You know, I learned that, of course, the lesson the hard way, both in YouTube, because I was very, very late to get to the YouTube channel. I might have established it 8 years ago, but I really never started doing anything anywhere near consistently as say the last 2 years. And the young guy that helps me do my videos, and he's got to be about 26 or 7. He and his girlfriend said, and his fiance now, said, if you want to grow this, because I've gone from, let's say, 50, which is my friends and family who are probably the only ones watching it first. Said, I don't know what I average, a few hundred per. And they said, look, if you want to get to the 10,000 per video thing, you got to start pumping out 3 videos a week. So go do your videos all at once, or as many as you can. And do it way ahead of time. Like you said, build a library in your downtime.
Yeah.
And even doing the podcast, I thought in the early stages, this was last year when it got started, is, hey, I'll reach out to somebody, and if we have 4 to 6 weeks lead time, I can get them on. Well, no, that's not how the golf industry works. Not when I have the type of people like you and Martin Chuck and Andrew Rice and Dan Hellman and all these, Susie Whaley, these things take time, and like I said, learning the hard way, but it is a lesson very well learned. So I can tell everybody that what Lorin is telling you, do what he says, because otherwise you're going to learn it the hard way, like I did.
Well, it's just, I feel bad for people who get all excited and they do a great job for 2, 3, 4 months, and they kind of start to get things going, and then for no fault of their own, because they just didn't really understand the commitment involved, they can't do anything for a while, and then they come back to it and they kind of have to start all over again. It's like it's much better off to post a little bit less during your off season and build a catalog of material and keep that flow going all year. Because at the magazines, you put out a magazine every month. Golf Channel, does morning drive every day. You can't put everything on one morning drive, but you got to show 6 days a week or 7 days a week. You got to have content all the time. So don't hoard the contents and then spread it out over time, rather than just pumping out everything you make as soon as you make it, because I think that's where people lose all their momentum. And then they get frustrated because they look at it and go, I haven't posted in 2 months, to heck with it. And a lot of people, you'll see their feeds, and once they stop posting, they don't ever even get back to it. So, and it's a great resource. It's a great way to develop, access to a local golf market with sponsored posts and things like that. So it's worth the trouble, but you've got to know what you're getting into and realize that you have to treat it like something booked in your lesson book. You have to know that you got to block off a couple hours a week or whatever to make sure that content is getting posted and put together. And if you're not going to do that, you're not going to be very successful.
No, and one of the things that I can speak to is when you do get started, you're obviously very nervous, because getting in front of a camera is not the easiest thing to do. It takes some time to develop, and if you're nervous and you're trying to cram a whole bunch of them in there, and then you're trying to push them all out, your emotional roller coaster is going to wear you out. And then if you don't get the growth that you think you should, then you're just like, you get you get depressed. Like, well, does nobody like me? And like you say, you got to do it consistent, and you got to do it when you have the time, and or set some time aside in a shoulder season or an off season.
And exactly. And you also, and the technique matters too. I mean, you need to have a good microphone. You can't shoot on a windy day. You learn by making mistakes. I mean, the world I've worked in at television and magazines is all about gloss, right? You're trying to make things look as beautiful as you can. And I tell people all the time, like, if you're going to shoot this stuff, shoot it early in the morning or late in the afternoon. The light's fantastic. If you have a hat on or glasses on in the middle of the day, your whole face turns black on the video. It doesn't even look good. If you don't have a good microphone, it's not going to sound good. And they'll tell you flat out, you can have an okay looking video, but if the audio is really good, it's okay. But if you have a great looking video and the audio is lousy, nobody's going to watch it. Right. So people don't know how to invest in the right things to make sure they're getting the kind of quality product that they want to put out. And look, you can go to YouTube and there's 1,000 videos about how to create the best YouTube videos and use, and what microphones to use and all that. And people just have to spend a little time and do some research. And it's not hard to get that information, but some people jump right in and don't take the time to kind of go through that phase of it, and I think that's important too.
Do you get into that as well? Is that a section of the website for the members that you help them? Hey guys, here's, if you're getting started, here's a couple options for microphones and cameras.
We've done some stuff on photography in the past because that's where my background was. Now I will tell you, as we were getting ready to sort of re-tee up Proponent Group this fall, we've built a small studio here at my house where we have, lighting and
is that where you do the 1 minute video, the 1 minute
yeah,
email?
Exactly. So, and we're going to be able to do live streaming shortly. We actually downloaded our final software package last week and we're testing it now. So our goal is to be able to do all those things in video that everybody talks about being able to do, and do them at a pretty high level. And as we keep learning, but probably by the end of the year, I expect to be putting out some information for the members on, hey, look, here's what we learned as we went through this whole process. You may want to do live streaming because of COVID. You may want to, have the ability to, do high-end podcasts, things like that. Here's what we learned going through this process. So yes, you're right. Every time we learn something, it's like the great examples that when Mike Bender decided to build this teaching building, my wife and I were intimately involved in that whole process. It took about 18 months from start to finish. And I saw everything that can go right and can go wrong in building a 5,000 square foot teaching academy. So as soon as we finished that, we filmed all the grand openings. We, took all the budgets and numbers, and we basically packaged all that into information for Proponent members because we had that firsthand knowledge. So we're kind of going through that same thing right now with all this technology because of COVID. So many people are going to all these Zoom things and online lessons and live streaming, and we're kind of learning that now as we go.
Is Eric Sigorno? I don't know if you know Eric or if he's a member of Proponent. I think he is.
He is.
But he was on, I want to say, Cordy Walker's Golf Science Lab, and I think it was either at the Pinehurst teaching get together. Was it that was the Golf Top 100?
Yeah, Golf Magazine did that at Pinehurst.
Yep,
yes.
and they did it. Cordy was doing, I think, 15 or 20-minute interviews, and Eric went through that he made exactly. He basically did exactly what you said, where he made the commitment. He said, "I'm going to hire somebody who's a camera expert. I'm going to set aside time, 2 to 3 hours every week, and every Sunday." I think he said he listens and watches YouTube videos on how to improve your things as small as your thumbnail, how to attract more people, how to write titles, and all these things. So I don't know if he kind of got that push from you guys, but I think he's done a great job. And
I think he was well down the way on his own, but I can tell you that yes, it's like all these little subtle things that you don't think about until they're staring you in the face. And it's like, yes, which frame do I use for my thumbnail? How many words should be in the description box, to maximize that? Do the hashtags matter? Like it's like you create the content, but that's only the first half of the project. The other half of the project is actually figuring out the best way to get the audience to absorb it and interact with it. And that's where Eric has been brilliant about, investing in those pieces, because a lot of coaches don't invest in that, and they put a lot of work into content and then don't see much of an audience out of it.
Yeah, because you can have the best product in the world. If the people out in the world don't know about it, then, or they don't trust it, well, they're not going to use it.
I'd say this too, Pete, where a lot of people kind of like, Golf Channel and Golf Magazine and Golf Digest and all these things, like, I don't really need that. I can do everything on social media, but I'll tell you what, it costs a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort to build an audience. And that's what those magazines and Golf Channel bring to the world, is they've already put those audiences together. I mean, the golf magazines have 5 to 6 million readers a month. Golf Channel has 12 to 15 million people who tune in some point during the month. And that's why something like Golf Now, the tee time business, is so successful, because 24/7, 365, if you're watching Golf Channel, you're seeing promotions for the tee time business. And that audience is massive. There is no other audience like it in golf. And, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to build an audience. A lot of people think they can just cut to the chase and have 100,000 people following them. It just doesn't work that way.
I'm just amazed, and maybe it's just too simple for some people to see, but guys like you who were in the industry and then were I'm not coming up is the wrong word, but you were working within and growing things as the social media craze took off. Like you and Justin Tupper. And I remember Justin did a talk at the local PGA meeting where he said, you don't have to have fancy lighting. All you got to do is get up early and shoot in the morning or shoot in the evening because the light's absolutely perfect.
Yep.
As you said, have good audio. And Martin Chuck said the same thing. The one thing that anyone that's going to do this, you'd have to have good audio. But I don't understand why more and more people don't reach out. I mean, you should have thousands of people subscribe to Proponent Group. And it's like,
Maybe someday if we're lucky.
It's like, yeah, well, I mean, this podcast doesn't have that big a reach yet, but hopefully someday it will. But anybody that's listening, it's like, you need to, if you want to grow your business, here is an entity that provides all the tools for you to do that. All you got to do is go do it.
We've been a boutique up until now. I mean, we've been friends of friends, recruiting friends of friends, and people I've met through the years. And, we've worked with about 1,200 coaches over the last 13 years. And I'm really proud of that because there's three people on the team, including myself, that really do this day in and day out. And that's part of the allure of the PGA is that there's a lot of thousands of coaches out there that probably don't really know much about Proponent Group. And I'm hoping that we can help more of them. I mean, that's what's enjoyable to me. I like to wake up in the morning and know that we help some new people with some business issues that they've never had help with before or never thought about in the way we've tried to help them. And I'm not saying we have all the answers, but we've always been very collaborative. And the people who have been part of Proponent Group are very good about helping other members. So people can join and they may bring me something I don't know the answer to, but we know somebody in the group will have that answer. And we reach out to people all the time to have them help other members. And I hope that as that collaboration continues and the PGA works with us a little bit, that, we will extend our reach. We will work with more coaches than we have in the past. And that's the goal going forward.
I want to ask you a little bit about the teaching and coaching industry itself, because you have been around the best of the best, and people who are getting started and everybody in between. And you've seen so many things that have evolved. Do you think that coaching has changed a lot over, let's say, the past 10 or 20 years? I mean, you can go back 40 years if you want to, or is it somewhat cyclical in nature?
I'll tell you, my wife and I've had this conversation many times, and I probably have given different answers at different times. Here's where I'm at the moment, because kind of the pendulum swings back and forth a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think great golf instructors, great coaches have a tremendous handle on the science and the technique, and they also have a tremendous handle on the art of working with human beings. And I think the last 10 years, we've seen a huge push on the scientific side, right? Where people have more data, more information, more things they can measure and check. And that's great. That's all fantastic. And I think a lot of young instructors can get better at the technical side faster because of all that technology. Mm-hmm. I think there's 25-year-olds out there today who can look at a golf swing and look at the data from these technical marvels like TrackMan and be able to tell somebody standing in front of them exactly what's happening at impact. But are they able to cultivate 100 different ways to solve that problem, like a Martin Hall or a Mike Bender can do? Are they able to explain that to different types of people in different ways because different people learn differently? I mean, I think there will always be a strong art form to being a great instructor, no matter how much technology is available and how many drills you can call up on YouTube. At the end of the day, the golf coach needs to know how to work with somebody step by step. And they can take all that data in, they can take all that information in, but they still need to know how to break it down and help that student standing in front of them in the proper sequence. And that's the art form in my mind. And that's what my wife is amazing at. I mean, she can absorb all that information, but she's not going to talk to you about 98% of what she just saw. She knows the 2% you need to start with to make progress. And I think that's where the great instructors stand out from maybe the not so great. But as far as your question about people coming in the industry, I think you can become a skilled instructor, skilled technical instructor very quickly now compared to 20 or 30 years ago. But I don't think you necessarily learn the art form of teaching any faster.
No, I think and you're only going to get that through experience. I went to Ferris State, and we used to have to do our certifications, and teaching was one of them. And Mark Wood, the this is going back years ago. So Mark was still doing the Golf Digest schools.
Yep.
And he told us the story that when he got into teaching, he knew a little bit, but I don't remember the facility he was at or who his boss was, but they said, you're going to teach the entire summer for free. And he absolutely hated it. But I mean, what's he going to do? Speak up? He's going to lose his job. But I mean, and here it was 20 years later, and he's telling us a story, and we're all wondering, like, wow, I'd quit. I wouldn't do that shit. And he says, but here's the thing. I got so much experience that year because my teaching book was full that I actually learned how to become a better teacher and had no idea how bad I was at speaking to people, relaying information, giving them what they need instead of telling them how much I know. And he said it was the best thing that ever happened in his teaching career.
Well, and as I think you would understand as somebody in the industry, it's very clear that when you start teaching as a professional, you're basically teaching your own swing at the beginning because that's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be mentored and study and learn. I'll tell you, my wife is a great example. She's an amazing teacher. And we just did a thing about certification programs this week for our proponent members. We did a survey, and we actually surveyed our members about over 40 different certification programs are available for golf instructors. Everything from aim point putting, technique to 4D, biomechanics to whatever else is available. And I kind of looked at the list and I said, you've been to quite a few of these. And she'd been to like 15 of the 40. And I said, that's a pretty big investment. They're probably, $500 to $1,000 each on average. You got to go someplace for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yeah, but she said, we have people come in from all over to work with us. And my expectation is if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I worked with a stack and tilt person, or I worked with a golfing machine method or whatever, I need to know, as a great teacher, I need to know what that's all about. What are the mechanics of the golfing machine? What are the mechanics about the plain truth? What are the mechanics about impact zone? Like, if I don't know how to talk to these students about things that they're familiar with, then I'm not a great instructor. And it's not like she goes to golfing machine necessarily and starts teaching the golfing machine the next week, but she absorbs this information from all these different sources to make her a more well-rounded instructor. And she learns something at every one of those sessions that she's able to apply. It's just not like she's going in wholesale on any of them. So I think that's where a lot of young instructors don't understand, like, you need to be exposed to all sorts of methodologies to become a great instructor.
Yeah, and if for nothing else, it helps you understand the language of somebody, as you said, that might have went to another school and was taught under whatever theory that they learned with. You have to speak that language, or else it's like going to a foreign country. If you go to Europe and you don't speak the language, well, how the hell are you going to know where to go or what to eat or anything like that? So it's absolutely, I couldn't agree with you any more than that. And I'd love to, please tell your wife the same. That's a great thing.
And the flip side, Pete, is I think the saddest thing for me is when I see teachers get a little older and a little more experienced, and they kind of stop going to those programs. They kind of stop showing up at section events and summits, and they just kind of feel like, hey, I know enough. I can coast it in from here. And I always find, for somebody who teaches the game, I find that kind of sad, because teachers usually are at their best when they're learning, right? When they're absorbing new stuff.
They're growing. You got to be growing.
And I would say even Proponent Group members are some of the very best teachers in the business. I think we have some members who probably have started to back off or slack off a little bit, if you want to say it that way. And I find that a little disappointing. And I hope that's always going to be the minority. And I hope that the vast majority of the people I get to work with are always learning. I mean, I learn every day. Like we're just talking about all these electronics and building a video studio and stuff. Like, this is fascinating. Like, I'm learning stuff every day, and I love it after 30 some years in the business that we can still wake up every day. And by the end of the day, there's some new stuff we know we didn't know this morning. And I think that's where you want to be in any industry, right?
Well, yeah. If you're getting out of bed in the morning for too many days in a row and you have anguish over what you're about to do that day, you might be in the wrong business. But as you said, after 3 decades, you're learning something new every day. It keeps you excited. It keeps you invigorated. Can't wait to see what's next. How am I going to use this? How can I take all this experience that I have, and I have this new toy that I can incorporate it and knead it and use it, and then I can show other people how to do the same thing. I mean, it's an awesome thing. And when you said that you're involved in a couple of different things at a time, I think the one that people probably relate to most, that's on the Golf Channel, is Chris Como. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think he even said he's always doing. He has a number of different things that he can go to. He's got his tour pros. He's got the show. He's got his teaching, the membership where he teaches. He's always learning from other coaches. So he's constantly the perspective is always changing. It's never the same, and it keeps you going.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Sean Foley and others, so maybe some of those guys about that same age as Chris, I think they are very engaged that way. I think the technology, they're always exploring something new, and they're always following stuff on the internet. And I think that's kind of the way they've been brought up the last 20 years, and they are involved in a lot of things that are not just traditional, teaching resources. And I think that's been fantastic for guys like that. And Chris, honestly, he loves visiting instructors and spending the day with them. And he'll tell you every time he goes out and films a show, he knows more after he gets done filming the show than when he started. And I think that's a great place to be in life, right? If you can be in a business where that's the way you get to pursue, what you love to do, then it doesn't get much better than that.
That was one of the ancillary benefits of me doing this podcast now that I think you're around the 30th show. And it was, the guests that I've had were not carefully selected, but they were, the whole thing was experts in your field and have a ton of information to give. And it's one that some of the local guys in the industry said, well, I don't have time to listen to the show because I don't have an hour to 2 hours at a time. I said, well, I can't invite somebody who has his brain full of information and experience and say, hey, you got to jam it in 45 minutes or less, because there's no way. You don't even scratch the surface. But what I've learned most is talking to all different kind of people, and you learn something from each and every one of them. And it's made my teaching tremendously better in the year and a half I've been doing it.
Well, and just the fact that you do this just tells me everything I need to know, because most instructors wouldn't take the time and effort to track down the people they want to talk to and sit in the evening and spend an hour and a half talking to somebody like this. So, that's the epitome of what I love to see in golf instructors, is that you're actively searching out fresh information all the time, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and the scary thing is when I don't know somebody, because I'm new to the interview process more or less. If when I know somebody, you and I we've never met in person, but we've had a couple emails back and forth, and you were kind enough once to ask me to write an article for the newsletter. But when you don't know somebody, and it's very nerve-wracking, as we talked about before we came on with technology, to go into an interview when you have somebody who's highly, highly qualified, and you're doing this over the phone, even without even face-to-face, and you're trying to show all they know to the people who are listening. That's the scariest part for me, that each time I do, when I'm nervous as can be. But it helps me in teaching, because if I've got beginners out there or 20 handicaps and we're hitting pitch shots over bunkers and they're nervous as can be, I played at a fairly high level. Sometimes I don't even comprehend that. But it helps me, and I'm in a position where I'm super nervous, to understand them in a position where they're super nervous, where they don't have the experience.
Well, and I think you just touched on something that sometimes I've brought up when I've spoken at different places. And, I am not a golf instructor, I'm not a PGA member. I've never given a golf lesson for money. So I don't claim to understand all of the nuances, but I would say you just pointed out something that I think a lot of golf instructors really struggle with, is that they assume that the person in front of them has a comfort level that they just don't have. And that's why a lot of people don't take a lot of golf lessons, and a lot of people don't come back for more golf lessons, because the instructors and or the facilities don't make people feel comfortable enough. And I think that's a big problem in the golf industry. And a lot of our members are great at it. I watch my wife again. She's always a great example. She's very friendly and easy going with people and tries to make sure they're comfortable. But, a lot of coaches just kind of assume that people, can do things they can't do or are comfortable, and they wonder why people don't come back for more instruction. I think that a lot of times that's really the reason why people kind of shy away from spending a lot of time on the lesson team.
That hit me right in the face. The year that I got off of playing full time and got back into teaching, I had a lady that we went out. She had taken a series of lessons. I don't remember if it was 5 or 7, and she had advanced enough that it was time to go out on the golf course. And we went in the evening, so nobody was around. And there was just this creek, 15 yards in front of us, and then the green was another 20. So we're only 35 yards from the green. and she was deathly afraid. And the first instinct I had was, what is wrong with this person? What's so hard about this shot? And then it kind of dawned on me, hey, dummy, she's a beginner.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, if you haven't talked to the Operation 36 guys, Matt and Ryan, I think what they are doing is pure genius, because basically they've got 500 golf courses now where you move people up 25 yards off the green or 5 yards off the green, or put them on the edge of the fringe.
Mm-hmm.
And you find a way for people to play 9 holes of golf and shoot around 36. And it can be from whatever distance it needs to be, but people feel some success and they're not embarrassed. And I've always said this was one of my favorite examples in all of golf instruction. The people at Cog Hill in Chicago and the people who own Cog Hill, the Gemsek family, very smart operators. 300,000 golfers a year play their golf courses in Chicago.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and they have a big teaching operation, big driving ranges. And they were trying to figure out how to get more people to take their beginner clinics. And they were doing fine, but they weren't seeing the numbers they thought they could see. And somebody on the staff came up with the idea of changing it to No Embarrassment Clinics and No Embarrassment Golf Schools. And as soon as they changed the name to No Embarrassment, they quadrupled the number of people who signed up the next year for the exact same clinics.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's just a mindset, right? And people who teach the game and have been around the game their whole life, we assume people are going to, they'll show up at the golf course and bring their clubs to the range and they're ready to go. Actually, they don't even know where the range is when they pull up in the parking lot. They don't even know what they're supposed to do. And like you said, you could do 5 or 6 lessons on the driving range, and then it's like, okay, let's go play golf. And like, okay, what do we do now? How do we go play golf? And golf instructors are shame on us as an industry, are not aware a lot of times of how people truly feel when they're standing in front of them, and we scare a lot of people away.
I think that goes not only for that, and I'm not knocking golf coaches because I'm one myself, but as far as perspective and things like that, it always has amazed me that you will have 2 differing teaching philosophies that will look at the same swing and then almost knock the other system, or say, here's what this guy's doing, and the other coach says, no, here's what this guy's doing, and here's why I'm right. And it's just like, and they're looking at the identical same thing. And even with some of the technology today, now it's even justified or verified even more that's what's happening, that no, but he's doing this. And it cracks me up.
It's pretty unnecessary to have to, slam the guy down the street. I don't know what anyone really gains from that. And I think most students kind of see through that as just, insecurities of some sort, which we all have, right? We all have insecurities about what we do, but I hate to see that. I don't think it's necessary. And I think we're seeing a little more collaboration in a lot of ways. I think we're seeing more coaches who will fly down to Orlando, for example, and they'll spend a day with Mike or Cheryl, and they'll bring their students with them, and they'll kind of work with another coach and get a fresh set of eyes on those swings and some fresh ideas on what to work on. And the coach will go back to them to Rochester or Buffalo or wherever, and work with them with some new ideas. And the students and the home coach, they don't think any less of their home coach because they all spend some time with another coach. And I think we're heading more in that direction for a lot of people, but yes, there's still a lot of insecurity in this industry, and it gets transferred to the student as negativity within the industry. And I think that harms us as an industry when people, basically have to talk ill about other people in the industry, right?
Well, the only thing I could come up with in my own head is that if 2 people are looking at the same thing, meaning a swing, it's somewhat similar to art, in that 2 people can look at the same painting and get a completely different emotion or feeling from it.
Yeah, and you can work with the same individual differently. I mean, if you took the top 100 teachers and you put them in a line on a big driving range like Orange County National and just put them all the way around the whole driving range, and you had a student go to all 100 of them, it'd be 100 different lessons. I don't care if it's David Leber and Butch Harmon standing next to each other. They're not going to give the same lesson. They're not going to focus on the exact same thing. The golf swing is pretty complex. I would think we all would agree to that. And the body is very complex, and the student mind is very complex. So when you factor all those pieces in, if you're spending an hour with somebody, you're not going to give the same lesson to anybody else, no matter what your theories or methodologies are. And that's totally fine. That's kind of the interesting part of golf instruction, is that every instructor will take a little different tactic as to how to get where the student wants to go.
John Sinclair at one of the talks I listened to him give, he started it out by saying that he was reading that morning at breakfast where there was something in the science industry that was groundbreaking, that somebody had made a discovery, and more or less everybody within the industry was genuinely happy for the group or the person that did it. And he said, but if you come up with something new and what appears to be groundbreaking in golf, there are a fair number of people that are going to try to tear it down. And he said it's unfortunate that why coaches in particular have this need to maybe it's an insecurity, or maybe, like you said, that they get to a certain point and they don't want to continue to learn and grow. But he said, I don't know how to fix it, but I just hope that slowly diminishes or continues to diminish as things go on, as people go to hear him speak, or someone like you speak, or any of the various wonderful teachers that we have around the country.
Well, and you only have so much energy in the day. And when you're putting your energy towards negative things and tearing things down rather than building them up, that wears you down over time. I mean, that's just a human nature, right? So I just don't see any real positive upside to trying to critique every lesson a student in front of you has had from every other instructor they've ever been to. Mm-hmm. It's just there's no reason for that. Like, let's move on. Like, here's where you're at. Here's what I'm seeing. Let's move on. And and I think most instructors look. I don't think it's prevalent every day everywhere, but we do see it, right? We do see instructors who are they're insecure, and they would rather bash somebody else's teaching skills than just stand on their own merits. And I think that's certainly not just golf instruction, but we do see a lot of it, and hopefully that's becomes less and less prevalent every day.
Do you see the average handicap? Because we had this discussion about a year or so ago at a local coaches roundtable that there was some argument that the average handicap in the last, let's say, 25 years had not come down. And one of the arguments was, well, it had, but at that time, it was in large part due to the diminishing amount of people who were playing, and most people who were getting into the game and then leaving too quickly within, let's say, a year or two were novices or not that good of golfers. So that the improvement that was given on the national average of lowering in handicap was because it was elimination of higher handicaps that brought the average down.
That's a fascinating question. And I actually have a couple of thoughts on that, if you want me to dive in.
Absolutely. That's why I asked you.
So there's two pieces of data on that. The first piece is Golf Tech, because they are the only people who track every student from the day they show up until the day they stop taking lessons there. Mm-hmm. And they track them over periods of time. And I've spent a lot of time with the Golf Tech guys talking about this, and they will tell you that their data shows that if a student stays with a coach for a year, and they try to have them come in like once a week or, fairly regular, whatever it is, twice a month, those students on average take 7 strokes off their handicap. Again, there's probably some permutations to how that's discussed, but the reality is that they show very clearly in their databases and their tracking that if you stick with them for about a year, the typical student's going to shave 7 shots off their handicap. Now, the other piece of data that I always find very interesting when people say average handicap hasn't changed, is that's apples to oranges, pure and simple. If there's 2 million people in the GIN system, the GIN handicap system at the beginning of 2018, and there's 2 million people in the GIN system, let's say right now, it's not the same 2 million people.
Right.
So if you're going to start comparing handicaps and talking about people not getting better, let's actually track people over a time period who have taken instruction or have not taken instruction, let's say, and let's see what those people have done, like Golf Tech does. When you just look at the overall group of people who have a handicap in the USGA system, it's apples to oranges, and there's no way to make a real comparison. So that's my problem with the whole idea of like, oh, the average handicap hasn't changed. Well, there are many, many people in that 2 million who have gotten a lot better at golf in the last 2 years. And how did they get better at golf? Was it lessons? Was it playing every day? What was it? Like, they didn't all keep their handicap. Lots of people got a lot better at the game. So I think that's just a red herring when people throw that out and say, oh, the average handicap hasn't gone down, because lots and lots of golfers get a lot better, and hopefully a lot of that is because of good instruction.
Yeah, there's no hard data behind it. It's all, at this point, it's all assumption. And like you said, until somebody has some hard or empirical data to say, hey, everybody, here's like Mark Brody's book. Hey, here's what the actual data says. Here's years of research for every single shot that was taken, or here's, like you said, a full year of I don't know how many thousands of lessons Golf Tech has given, but here's what we can show that's empirical.
Yeah, because that's apples to apples. They're tracking the same people who are going through a progression, and I think that again, this is the kind of data I'm hoping a few years down the road will be much easier to gain from all golf instructors. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that golf instructors really should know about their students and they don't know. And this kind of sort of key performance indicators, I hope that between the PGA and Proponent Group, within a few years, every golf instructor who's serious about the business is going to start tracking this stuff, because it's going to make a huge difference in how we analyze what the successes and failures of the industry are.
Is part of what you all provide, will that be for forms that coaches can utilize off the website?
We're working through the KPI piece now. It's probably the biggest project I'm working on with the PGA of America right now, is we're really trying to figure out how to start collecting this data at a higher level, at a mass level, and also being able to break it down so that we can give the information to any coach who wants to track it on their own as to the best, most efficient way to be able to do that. One of the problems we have with golf instructors, in a lot of cases, they don't have access to having everything tracked on a POS system. And one of the things we really need to understand is what's the value of having a high quality golf instructor at a facility. And when the facility and the golf instructor are not able to pinpoint the spending patterns of people who take golf instruction there, it's very hard to understand what kind of values are being created. Are those people becoming members? Are they buying range passes? Are they having, are they buying dinner in the clubhouse? Are they bringing their friends out to play? Like, we don't track that very well in this industry, if at all. And some of the big multi-course operators have rewards programs and different ways where they can track student spending at the facilities. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out, is can we get those big companies to track the students of 400 or 500 or 600 instructors throughout the year and see when people come into the system and they start taking lessons at a facility, what happens to their spending? Because we have some rough data right now that says they spend 75% more money at a facility when they're actively taking golf instruction. That's a pretty big number.
That's very
when
big
you
number.
Think about it. And and also when people are taking golf instruction, they're not leaving the club. If their game is getting better and they're working on their game, they're not quitting the club at the end of the year. They're probably buying more equipment. They're probably spending more money in the dining room. They're probably bringing out more friends and family to play with them. Like all the spending goes up when your game is getting better. And that's what we're trying to actually show as a performance indicator. And nobody really is able to track that at the facility level yet. So that's the kind of big projects that I'm working on now. I can't tell you where exactly we'll end up, but that's the kind of stuff we know is probably the next big leap for the instruction industry, is to know those things.
That's awesome. I will watch that almost as anxiously as I waited to hear that you would relaunch Proponent Group to a large extent.
Well, everybody's been wonderful about the relaunch. We've worked with a lot of people over the years, and we've helped a lot of people that were in not such great situations at a certain moment. And those people have been wonderful about saying, hey, you know what, as long as you're involved with this and you're doing this full steam ahead, I want in. And I'm very grateful to have a wonderful group of people I've worked with and still want to be part of what we're doing going forward. So it's been great.
It's awesome. Well, I've had you for quite some time. You want to wrap up with some rapid fire? I always do at the end, and let
sure.
your family. I'll give you back to your family. I'm sure I don't want them mad at me. I haven't even met your wife, and I don't need her not liking me already.
Well, you got to come down and visit.
Absolutely.
Spend some time with Mike and myself and Cheryl. We got a lot of good golf stuff going on here in Lake Mary, Florida.
I've got to. I made it a point that as soon as that some of the restrictions or the travel and everything and the world was easier, that I was going to do that. So that is in my mind, to do that more, in particular with the teachers and the coaches, let's say within a 5 to 6 hour radius, start there and then go from there.
Definitely put that on your list. We would love to host you down here at some point in the near future, because it's what Mike and Cheryl do is amazing, and their facility is awesome. And I learned so much from them. And obviously if you come down here, we can sit around and talk about the industry as much as you want. So
yeah, bring them on the show, and we'll make it into a full podcast as well. That'd be awesome. All right,
so fire away.
Let's see, what do we got here this time? I keep changing the question so it doesn't get stagnant. Favorite sports movie?
Hoosiers.
Oh, you Indiana guy.
Yeah, I grew up in Illinois, so kind of.
Close
Kind of
enough.
close enough.
Uh, do you play golf? Let me just this kind of precursor to this question because I didn't even
I
ask you that
played
when we talked.
I played through college and loved competing, but I wasn't that good. So since college, no, I caddy for my wife more than I play now.
All right, so this question is a decent one. How many hole-in-ones have you had?
I have had zero hole in ones.
Oh,
40 years of golf, zero hole in ones.
and you tell your wife that instead of hitting it 30 yards longer, you want a hole-in-one.
Well, we've been working on it, but it hasn't happened. So,
Uh, best teacher that you know of that's not yet in the top 100.
that's a great question. I mean, I work with so many people who really fit that mold. Boy, I probably get myself in trouble if I pick one out. I mean, there are literally a couple hundred people that could be interchangeable in that top 100 list, no doubt about it. Youngsters, young people. I mean, we got a lot of young proponent members who are definitely on the nice trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a pass on that one just because literally I probably have 50 members, I should say.
That's
If
okay.
I
I don't want anyone mad at you, and I don't want them mad at me either. Because
That's
it's
right.
at some point in time, I'm going to want them to come on the show, and I don't need them. I don't need to plant a bad seed right from the beginning.
Well, that's a great question, and it's honestly, I'm not sure I could narrow it down to one if I really had to.
It's okay. The most used app on your phone.
The most used app on my phone, I would say it's probably the weather app because I'm checking it for my wife every day before she heads out the door, and I'm checking it every night to see what tomorrow's rain pattern is going to be for Orlando. So yeah, I'm probably on there 5 times a day.
Good, cool. I check that quite a bit myself too, for obvious
If
reasons.
you're in the golf business, you're checking the weather all the time.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to make the Ryder Cup, let's say that the next time they had it, they said, "Hey, we're going to take you as a captain's pick." You had to, and they have the walk-up song to the first hole now. What would be your walk-up song?
Oh, that's a good question. Boy, I don't follow that very closely, all the walk-up songs. I just know the Yankees, Sandman, they play all the time for the relievers up there, and that seems to be the big one that gets the New Yorkers rocking and rolling. So maybe I would use that. And if it was at Bethpage, we'd probably have to use Sandman just because everybody in New York's a Yankee fan.
That's a pretty good one. Metallica, right?
Yeah, Metallica.
Yep.
It was entering Sandman, pardon me. That's
Yep, that was huge when I was in college. It's still one of my faves. Favorite line from Caddyshack?
Oh boy, again, hard to narrow it down, right? I was thinking of one today though. It's funny because there's a million of them, right? And today I was thinking of one. David Ogren posted something on his Facebook page today. He was showing the kids at his academy how to dig holes, cups. He had a cup digger.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself when I saw that, I was going to post in there and say, yes, and the world needs ditch diggers too. So, I mean, basically anything you see on Facebook, there's probably a line from Caddyshack that you could apply to it. So I thought that was a good one today.
Let's see. If you could have anybody's swing in the world, whose would it be?
Just for aesthetics, I've watched Charles Howell III for 25 years have the exact same swing, and it just looks like the positions are so perfect. And I'd love to have his bank account because I did realize somebody told me he's top 10 in all-time earnings on the tour, which is pretty amazing for a guy who's only won like 3 or 4 tournaments.
Right. Yeah, he's like a top 20 machine, ATM machine. That's what we call it.
It's unbelievable. I mean, he literally is like top 10 all-time money winner on the PGA Tour, Charles Howell III.
I can't even begin to imagine what his pension fund is going to be like.
And his swing still, to me, looks the same as it did 20 years ago when he came out on tour.
Mm-hmm.
So I can take that because I can't swing the same 2 days in a row. So I love somebody who never changes.
Let's see. A couple more. Dream foursome.
Dream foursome. I always loved to play with my dad. He brought me into the game when I was 8 or 9 years old. And he still plays golf. He's 84 this year, and he still plays in 2 or 3 leagues a week, 9-hole leagues.
That's awesome.
So he would have to be in the foursome. Obviously, would love to play golf with Tiger Woods. Fascinating watching his entire career from when he was a junior. I'm not going to count my wife because I get to play with her all the time. Probably the only people I play golf with during COVID is my wife and my daughter. So we'll exclude those two from the dream foursome right now. But I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, honestly, I spent a lot of time around Annika during her entire career, and I did a lot of articles with her when I was at the magazines. I love to play golf with Annika too. I've always enjoyed being around her.
All right, that's a pretty damn good one. Annika, Tiger, yourself, and your dad. That would be a very good day.
That would be. And playing with any of them would be a great day, but all four, that would be pretty
Mm-hmm.
special.
Your go-to drink when you're playing golf for enjoyment?
Uh, that's a good question because I learned a long time ago if I started drinking on the golf course, I play pretty lousy. So I'm pretty much the guy that just drinks like Coca-Cola on the golf course. And if it's hot out, there's nothing better than a Coke on a 90-degree afternoon. So
Right, a real cold Coke.
yes, really cold, lots of ice.
All right, and the last one, this one everybody gets because it's such a, you can't answer it wrong. Greatest of all time, Tiger or Jack?
Greatest of all time. I came into the game when Jack was at the end of his career, and I'm a huge fan. And I got to do some articles with Jack at the magazines. Because I've spent a little more time around Jack than I spent around Tiger, I would lean towards Jack. But I've watched Tiger's entire career, and right now it's almost a 50-50 coin flip. But if Tiger wins another major at this point in his career, I almost think that Tiger has passed Jack if he can win any more majors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an argument you can make either way, and I tell everybody I think that it's about split in the 30 shows I've done. You could almost 15 one and 15 the other.
And I'll tell you a real quick Jack Nicklaus story for 30 seconds,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Take as much time as you want.
The first time I ever worked with Jack, we did a swing sequence about his son Gary when Gary came out on tour. And I took the photos down, and I met with Jack and Doral. He was playing Doral that week, and we were in the locker room at the end of the day. And there was the Heat game that night, a Miami Heat game of like 8 o'clock or whatever. It was probably 4:30, 5 o'clock. And we sat down in the locker room for a few minutes, and he made some comments. And we had Jack's swing at the same age as Gary's swing. And he kind of looked at them side by side. And you'd never seen the two side by side like that. And we talked for 5 or 10 minutes about the swing, made some notes. And I'm like, hey, thank you so much. It's really great to meet you. You know, obviously, getting to do this article with you is a lot of fun for me as a huge fan. And he says, oh, did you want something to drink? And we sat there and talked about the Miami Heat and basketball for the next like hour and 15 minutes. So I just found Jack to be one of those guys who, even though he's Jack Nicklaus, like he just was a pretty normal guy to be around. And he still lives in the same house he's lived in for 35 or 40 years in Palm Beach. He used to invite the editors over from the magazine once a year for a sort of a special thing. He had kind of an editor's cup thing. And, you know, his family would be there and they'd be hanging out and Barbara, his wife and all that. And he was just a normal guy to have a conversation with. But my first time I ever worked with him, we sat and talked basketball for an hour and 15 minutes.
That's awesome. That is
so I've been
really
very
cool.
fortunate. I've gotten to be around some interesting people in the golf business.
Well, if there's coaches out there, young or old or anywhere in between, there's people out there that want to either join Proponent or follow you guys. Where's the best place for them to go to learn more and follow you if you're on social media and all those good things?
You bet. Yeah, we have a Facebook page for Proponent Group, which is easy to find, and proponentgroup.com, proponent-group.com is the website.
And I'll have that in the summary, the link, and it'll be linked. Anyone wants to click on it.
So they can always go to the website, and that's always up to date. But yeah, we're on Facebook. We're probably going to be doing a little bit more on Instagram and that in the near future because a lot of coaches are really focusing on Instagram. So we probably should be there. But right now, if you go to Proponent Group on Facebook, you'll see we have a public page there. And we also have a private Facebook group that most of our members are on where they actually collaborate and ask each other questions. So if you join us, that's one of the things we have is a very active group that shares information on their Facebook group.
You guys are doing such a great thing. Like I think I've said it enough, but I'll say it one more time, that anybody who's listening, who's a coach or instructor, wants to be, and if you don't join the Proponent Group, you're doing yourself and your students a huge disservice because as obviously, when we just touched on it, I'm sure we could talk for another hour and a half. I mean, an hour and a half just blew through.
Well, it's very nice of you to invite me to have a conversation. As you can tell, I enjoy talking about the business and I love working with the coaches, and I'm really excited that we are kind of getting a mulligan. I mean, we were still doing Proponent Group when I was at Golf Channel, but some things changed there that just really wasn't going to make it sustainable. I'm just very fortunate that I have the ability to go back full time and focus on this, and we hope to work with many, many coaches going forward.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you didn't give it up when you did go to Golf Channel, that you still had it running.
Yeah.
And that's a great
thing.
That
was all part of the deal. I told them I'd come over, but I said, look, we work with all these hundreds of coaches, and I don't want to give that up because I think it's valuable to the industry. And they agreed. They said, no, this is great, and we want to support it. And they did support it. but they have bigger issues now than worrying about me and Proponent Group, and they were great about the transfer back to me operating on my own. So it's all good. We're full steam ahead, and any coach that is interested in having us help them out, we'd love to have that conversation and get them on board.
Awesome. Lorin, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. I will definitely give you and Cheryl a call when I'm headed down that way next, or at least some advance notice to, hey, I'm coming. Be ready.
Please do. We would love to host you, and I'm sure you'll learn a couple things if you hang out with Mike and Cheryl.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Well, you have a great night, and tell her I said hello.
Thanks very much. I sure will. Have
Bye-bye.
a night, Pete.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the Pro Shop at 843-785-5353.